We often hear these words in the Declaration of Independence, probably not often enough, but life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words are too often taken for granted. And now you've heard from many different leaders who are champions of liberty. You're going to hear from my friend Chip Roy here soon, talking about the great work that he's doing in Congress. But you hear too much lip service from a lot of these politicians. And they'll talk about liberty and then they'll vote against liberty. I realized today as I got here, landed here this afternoon, I hadn't gone and looked at the book definition, the dictionary definition of liberty recently. It's a good reminder. It is the condition of being free from confinement, servitude, or forced labor. It is the condition of being free from oppressive restriction or control by a government or other power. It is a right to engage in certain actions without control or interference by a government or other power. Words are powerful, and they mean things. And right now in this election, as you very well know, there is nothing short of freedom and liberty on the line. We can look through the laundry list of examples of how increasingly our government is becoming more and more tyrannical and taking more and more of our freedom away. Oftentimes it is cloaked in, well, we have to do this in order to keep you safe, or we have to do this because we know what's best for you. But even now we are seeing that they're not even making excuses anymore. The brazen abuse of power and power grabs that are ongoing. We look at the last 4 years under the Biden-Harris administration, and I thought, as I look through all these examples, and I talk about them very often so that we are reminded of the truth about what's really going on, I saw, how many of you saw Kamala Harris's first ad? Her latest campaign ad? A few of you. So for those of you who haven't seen it, for those of you who haven't seen it, the two words that she is using in that ad and that you will continue to hear for the next 3 months is freedom and our future. She is promising to be a president who will champion our freedom and who will bring about a bright future. Don't forget this, because you know the power. We're already seeing the big propaganda media machine in full speed. They are trying to revise history and trying to create this image of Kamala Harris that is not based on reality. And she is using these words very intentionally, that she will fight for our freedom and our future. Know this, because you guys are the soldiers who are out on the streets, who are the truth tellers. And this is what we are going to be confronted with on every front. And the best way to combat their propaganda is with courageous and strong voices of truth. The irony and the hypocrisy is so rich here because, again, she will say these words that are powerful words, that have a powerful meaning to all of us as Americans and to those of us who have volunteered to serve our country. When we take that oath to support and defend the Constitution, it means something in a visceral way. So it is rich to hear these words coming from a person who was charged with the serious task of securing our borders, lied to us for the last 3 years, telling us the borders are secure. Shouldn't even have to go to the border because there's nothing going on there. She's all... And so what are they saying now about the border? Oh, that was never her job at all. This is coming from someone who outright rejects the Constitution. If you remember when she was a senator on the Judiciary Committee, she was questioning one of Trump's judicial nominees, Brian Boucher, and opposing him and attacking him because he had the audacity to be a devout Catholic and a member of the Knights of Columbus. That disqualified him in her view. She should read the Constitution, perhaps, and take a look at what Article 6 says, that there shall be no religious test. As she touts freedom, she does not believe in free speech, and she stood right alongside Joe Biden in calling for standing up our modern-day ministry of truth to tell us what we are allowed to see, what we are allowed to say, and what information we must be protected from because a woman who does the Mary Poppins dance says it is so. This is coming from a person who talks about freedom and our futures, is also a person who not only doesn't believe in our Second Amendment rights, has said over and over and over again how committed she is to taking away our guns. She doesn't believe, she touts being a prosecutor president and that she's tough on crime, but she doesn't believe in our right to defend ourselves and our loved ones. She doesn't believe in the right our founders gave us with the specific intent of recognizing that it's up to us to stand up against the abusive power of a tyrannical government. She doesn't believe in our civil liberties and our fundamental right to privacy, our right to be protected from warrantless search and seizure by our own government, joining with Republicans and Democrats in Congress over and over and over again to extend and expand things like the secret FISA court and our government's authorities to violate our Fourth Amendment rights. She is someone who doesn't believe in the rule of law, fairness, and justice. And for those of you who watched my debate with her in 2019, so you've seen it. Got it. She claims to stand for criminal justice reform and true justice and equality for all, and yet she fought hard to prevent DNA evidence from being presented to a judge that would have exonerated an innocent man who was sitting on death row. And you heard Sean talk about this earlier, and many others. She rejects the right of parents to raise their own children. Rejecting the right to say, hey, I know what kind of education is best for my child. I should have the freedom and right to say that and to make that decision for ourselves. Fundamentally, when you look at what is the through line through all of these examples, and there are many more, fundamentally at its core, and this is one of the main reasons why I left the Democrat Party, because she's not alone in this, is they reject freedom. They reject freedom. And that is what's at the heart of this. They believe that they know what's best for us more than we do, and that they and they alone should be the authority that can dictate to us how we must live our lives, what we're allowed to think and read and say and believe. By rejecting freedom, they reject our Constitution and must not be allowed to be in power. So we have our work cut out for us. These next 90 or so days are going to be tough. The propaganda machines are already working overtime. I saw a post yesterday that someone sent me that MSNBC had up for a little while, taking clips from a Joe Rogan conversation with Michael Malice and splicing it together to make it sound like Joe Rogan was endorsing Kamala Harris to be president, number one. But the funny thing was that the splicing of words that they took, I posted this on my social media if you want to take a look, because it really made me laugh. They took things that Joe said about me and made it sound like he said them about her, to include, hey, she deployed to Iraq 2 times. She served in a medical unit. She has seen the cost of war. The brazen propaganda, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We got to know what we're up against because we have to be the strong and courageous voice of truth. We're up against the big propaganda media. We're up against big tech. We've seen how the algorithms are already working hard to both try to erase the fact that there was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. And they're trying to erase Kamala Harris's egregious record of every single public office that she has held, and doing everything they can to bolster this new narrative and this new persona that they're pushing, working hand in glove with the Democrat elite. I don't know what that means. I'm going to say no comment on that one. But here's the thing. A lot of people have been saying, okay, well, look, the Democrats just launched this coup, and they took out Joe Biden, and they put in Kamala Harris, and Democrats didn't really even get a say in it. Apparently today in a virtual meeting, some of them did. But the thing is, you look back to 2016. I was a vice chair of the DNC back then. I left that position as I saw they were rigging that Democratic primary for Hillary Clinton. Fast forward to 2020, Democratic primary. I was in that Democratic primary and experienced firsthand about how they worked hand in glove with the big mainstream media to pick and choose which candidates they wanted you as voters to be exposed to, what they wanted you to know. And for the rest of us, they did their very best to smear and destroy, undermine credibility, black out, and completely cancel so that people would say, oh, you're running for president. I've never heard of you. The examples are great about how serious the powers are who are launching all that they possibly can against us and against our freedom. It's discouraging, honestly, because I hear from a lot of people who express how hopeless they feel in this moment. That the powers seem so dark and so great. How do we lift our voices and break through the noise? Here tonight, when I got here, I talked to a few people asking, how do we break through? How do we, just little old American people, how do we break through this gridlock of noise and power and propaganda that is being thrown at us? By standing together, recognizing that while we may not agree on every issue, we come together around our foundation, our core, this foundation of liberty and freedom, and recognize that we forget sometimes our founding fathers had some pretty fierce and strong disagreements with each other, and they battled it out in private and in public. Some of them absolutely hated each other. But ultimately, what did they do? They recognized the imperative of that moment in time and the mission, the no-fail mission they had before them. Well, we are facing a no-fail mission today. We cannot afford to fail. We cannot afford to stand on the sidelines and think, okay, well, somebody else is going to go out there and make this happen. We can't afford to sit back and say, hey, good for you. I'm glad you're running for office. I'm going to stay at home. Good job. Keep up the good work. It is going to require every single one of us, whatever your party affiliation may be, whatever your feelings on one issue or another, or how do we solve this challenge or that challenge, the reality is that unless we stand up and defend freedom today, we won't have a vibrant open marketplace of ideas where we can debate how we best tackle and solve the challenges we face in healthcare or in housing or the role of government as a whole. We will not be able to have these debates unless we live in a truly free society. So we have to be vigilant. We've already seen over these last 3.5 years how divisive it has become, the brazenness of the abuse of power. Be vigilant and stand strong and be tireless in our defense of freedom. There's a quote that I want to share with you that was quite jarring to me when I read it. And it's a quote from President Lincoln that he delivered on January 27th of 1838 in a speech to the Young Men's Lyceum of Springfield, Illinois. He said, quote, "At what point then is the approach of danger to be expected? I answer, if it ever reach us, it must spring up amongst us. It cannot come from abroad. If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." That is the seriousness of where we are as Americans and as a country. Those who are in power in our country today are leading us and our great nation towards this suicide that Abraham Lincoln warned against. This threat to our freedom and our liberty is coming from within. And if we don't take action, then we will look back on this moment when it's too late with regret, but we won't be able to say that we weren't warned, that we didn't see it coming. There are many people throughout our nation's history who have sacrificed everything in defense of our freedom, in defense of our liberty. And so I encourage you to remember them. I know people, I've served with people who I carry in my heart on those days where you might feel a little bit tired, on those days where the attacks are kind of strong, not being deterred when people call you names, or even when people close to you challenge you or criticize you. Or maybe they stop talking to you altogether simply because you are living up to your responsibility, our responsibility as Americans to be defenders of freedom and liberty. Stand strong. It's going to take hard work, a lot of door knocking, phone calls, social media, going out and doing the good work of rising above the noise and the name calling and standing strong and proud with aloha for freedom and liberty, now and forever. Thank you all so much. It's so great to see you. Keep up the great work.